Hello, my name is Chris. I'm a partner at Bay31 and I'm going to present our solution for SAP role engineering called Role Designer for SAP. Bay31 is based in Switzerland with customers in Europe and North America. We offer software for access governance based on proprietary data mining technology for role and risk discovery. We provide all our solutions as a subscription service, and we host them on Amazon EC2. As you know, SAP has a very complex authorization model and uses roles exclusively for all authorizations. Companies invest a huge amount of money to develop SAP roles, and these roles need constant maintenance. It seems that as soon as your company has finished an SAP role design project, the organization changes, or business processes change, and your roles need to be redesigned. It's remarkable then that there are so few tools that support the SAP role design process. SAP security architects often use spreadsheets and scripts and sometimes homegrown databases, and some of the larger consultancies have developed in-house tools for their own consulting work. But most of these tools are pretty simple, and they don't provide the kinds of analytics that SAP experts really need. The result of this is that SAP analysts are a lot less productive than they could be, and SAP role engineering projects are a lot costlier than they should be. So we offer a solution to this problem, a professional tool for SAP role engineering called Role Designer. Role Designer is made specifically for SAP security specialists, and it supports you to do three things: assess existing SAP roles and discover roles that need redesign, design and role mine new SAP roles, and in the process, check SAP roles against SOD and compliance policies. Role Designer is a subscription service which we host on Amazon EC2 and also offer for on-site deployment. Let's take a look at Role Designer with a demo. This is the Role Designer user interface. Here we can see two kinds of information. On the right is the authorization data. We have an overview of all the authorization entities, including users, roles, and permissions or entitlements as they are called in Role Designer. And Role Designer lets you list, search, filter, and inspect all of these entities. For example, in the list of users, I can select one of the users and inspect that user's authorizations in detail. Here we see the roles assigned to this user. It's also interesting that Role Designer imports transaction usage statistics from SAP, so we can see which roles the user has actually used. And here we see the complete set of permissions that this user is assigned through the roles. As you can see, the full details of the SAP authorization model are represented here, including authorization values, ranges, and wildcards. This area lists all the roles. Again, I can select a role and inspect it in detail. Here you can see the authorizations that comprise the role. And here are the authorization values associated with the role at the very lowest level of the SAP authorization model. And finally, here are the users that are assigned this role. On the left, we have high-level business metadata. These are business attributes that categorize users, entitlements, and roles. For example, in this dataset, we have users categorized according to job title and organization unit, also hierarchically, and also entitlements are categorized in several ways, such as by activity type and criticalness, and finally, roles are also categorized by type. It's important to realize that none of these business attributes are hardwired in Role Designer. You can categorize authorizations and entities in as many ways as you like, and you can gather business attributes from different sources. In this case, for example, we gathered business attributes from SAP, from HR, and also from Active Directory. Role Designer lets you correlate these high-level business attributes with the low-level authorization data. And this is really important because we leverage the business perspective for role analysis. Here is an example. If we select a role, we can see here how the role correlates with different business categories. I can see how the role's assignments are distributed across the organization units. This role, for example, is assigned to 68 users, and 65 of them are in the global sales department. The other 3 are in the finance department and the R&D department. And we might ask why people in these departments have a customer service role, and we could go on to investigate that. Drilling down, I can see that all of the people with this role are in North America, which makes sense, and I can see that 53 out of 57 people in the North American Customer Service Department have this role. So this tells me that we could potentially define a provisioning rule to automatically assign this role to people in that department. Down here, I can see how this role is distributed over SAP modules. Most of the roles authorizations are concentrated in the Sales and Distribution module, with transactions also from quite a few other modules. But in this column with the check marks, I can see whether transactions in that module were actually used by the role. Role Designer uses SAP's historical transaction statistics to figure this out. So I can see that some of the authorizations in this role may be unnecessary, and maybe I can simplify the definition of this role. So these are a couple examples of how we leverage the connection between the high-level business categories and the low-level permissions for role analytics. Now we can also use these business categories to navigate and filter the dataset. For example, I can drill into the organization hierarchy to a particular department, and then here in the list view, I see only the users and roles that are involved in that department. Next to the list view, Role Designer also provides the matrix view, which gives a very visual representation of the users and roles in the department. The users are on the left, and the entitlements are across the top, and the role is represented by a cluster of assignments in the matrix. We can zoom out to get an overview, or zoom in to look at the details. We can also blend in selected attributes on the user or entitlement axis. So here I have the accounting department, and I can show the sub-department memberships for all the users. This makes it easy to visualize how roles correlate with business structure. For example, you can see how the credit master role correlates here with the membership in the credit department. Except that Marion Simpson has the role and is not in the credit department, while Guy Starr is in the credit department but doesn't have the role. So I may want to flag these things for review, and I can do this interactively in the matrix. Similarly, I can display attributes on the entitlement axis, and I can see, for example, which authorizations are critical. Now, it's not to be taken for granted that the roles are clustered so nicely in the matrix. Role Designer uses a pattern recognition algorithm to sort the roles and columns of the matrix in order to optimize the role visualization. We can also visualize historical statistics in the matrix. By clicking on this icon, we can see which transactions were actually used. Now the dark blue cells show only transactions that were actually used by each user. Within this role, for example, I can see that this transaction hasn't been used at all. I can also confirm this in the list view, and if I want, I can remove that transaction from the role. Finally, we can also visualize 2 or more roles at the same time in the matrix. Now we can see how the roles overlap. They have one user in common and a block of entitlements in common. We might decide that it makes sense to merge these roles. Role Designer makes that easy. I click the Merge button, and Role Designer automatically defines a new role, which is the union of the other two. Now let's do some role mining to define new roles based on existing permissions. In this dataset, I have only T-codes, and we've left out the unused T-codes. First, I'm going to drill into one module. Here I am in the General Ledger module. Now, say I want to make a base role for the most common General Ledger display transactions. So I filter the list here so that we see only the display transactions. And now I order the list with the transactions assigned to the most users on top. Okay, now let's say I want to make a role with the top 3 transactions. I've selected them in the list, and in the matrix, I can see how these transactions correlate with users. Now with one click, I can make a role. Here's the new role. Actually, we should call this a role template because I still need to add the authorizations. And Role Designer also helps me to discover the correct authorization values to instantiate this template where it is used. But I'll save that level of detail for another session. Role Designer also has a built-in SRD engine. We read the native export files from GRC, and Role Designer evaluates SRD rules internally. The purpose of Role Designer's SRD engine is so Role Designer can check SRD rules while you work on roles. But it's also very fast, so it's useful as well for quickly running a complete SRD scan. The SRD engine is implemented with our own in-memory data mining technology. There's no relational database involved, so no slow SQL queries and no expensive database acceleration necessary. Even on a simple desktop computer, Role Designer can run a complete SRD scan in under a minute. Here is an example of an SRD report generated in Role Designer. The report shows both user risks and role risks. For example, these entries show a user with an SRD violation where 2 functions conflict, and you can see the exact authorizations that are responsible for this conflict. Currently, this report is the main output from Role Designer's SRD engine, but we're now integrating SRD checks across the entire Role Designer interface. So shortly, you'll see SRD conflicts immediately where and when they appear, and be able to interactively analyze and diagnose SRD conflicts, and this will really make Role Design a lot more productive. Here's an overview of Role Designer's integration with SAP. Role Designer extracts authorization from SAP with an ABAP program called the Security Reader that runs on the target SAP system. The Security Reader automatically extracts all the relevant information, such as roles, users, permissions, and historical statistics, and generates a file that Role Designer reads. Then there are the SRD rules, which Role Designer reads in the native export format from GRC 5.3 or 10.0. To go in the other direction, Role Designer provides online and Excel reports from the role engineering process, so you can feed your roles back to SAP through PFCG. We're also working on a tighter integration with PFCG to make exporting roles back to SAP really easy. Here's a screenshot from the Security Reader. You can extract information from a default set of tables or from a specific set of tables and select statistical data or not. And the application generates a compressed binary file that you can read directly into Role Designer. This is the set of SAP tables that Role Designer works with. So this gives you an idea of the depth of integration with the SAP authorization model. Finally, I should mention that Role Designer is not at all limited to only SAP. Role Designer also works very well with any identity management solution or directory. You can also use Role Designer to define and maintain enterprise roles across both SAP and non-SAP environments. Role Designer also has risk scoring and assessment tools that make it particularly useful for audits and compliance assessments, as well as migrations and consolidations. Bay31 has partners and resellers around the world, and you can contact these partners as well for more information. If you're interested in Role Designer, we offer a free 30-day trial. We give you your own cloud-based Role Designer account, help you load some data of your own, and give you a free analysis of your data. Please feel free to contact me personally if you have questions, or if you would like to arrange a trial or a demo for your company.